Okay, we're all going to learn tonight a talk of the Rebbe from Parshas Beha'aloscha. So I'm in Eretz Yisrael, and we're reading now the Parsha of Shlach, which would be for the people outside of Eretz Yisrael, including the United States, next week. But we're a week ahead of you here in Eretz Yisrael, as things are. So we're going to learn Parshas Beha'aloscha, which the Rebbe said on the 19th the Rebbe verbringt on the 19th of Sivan in the year Tafshin Chavdalid, that corresponds to the year 1964. So the Rebbe says like this: Haschalas haparsha, he by Daber Hashem Moshe Lemar, God should speak to Moshe saying, Daber el Aharon, speak to Aaron. But Marta, I love, tell him, Beha'aloscha saneres, when you kindle the candles. Ubahagdama. The Rebbe says like this: when we analyze the menorah has various components. On the one side, the first thing is you got to make the menorah. You have to make Aharon. You have to make the menorah. Shemoshe niskasheba. We know Moshe struggled with making the menorah. As the Torah testifies to tell us about this. Menorah. God had to say, this is the menorah, as if he's pointing to something to show him how to make it. God showed him with his finger, so to say. The fish niskasha, because Moshe struggled in making the menorah. Again, you have to remember, the menorah was made out of a single piece of gold, no welding. God showed him how to do it. There's even another opinion that says that not just that God showed him how to make the menorah, Moshe just threw the gold into the fire and the menorah came out. God made it, it was made on its own. This is something about the menorah that's unique that we don't find with regard to any of the other vessels in the Mishkan, that God either showed him how to make it or that God told him, or so to say, he threw it into fire and God made it for him. So v'noisiv l'zeh, Shimon, v'noisiv l'zeh, yeshna ha'avodah da'atavas ha'menorah. Okay, so the first thing is about the menorah was making it, and that wasn't so simple. Moshe had struggled with figuring out how to make the menorah till either God had to show him how to make a menorah, or the menorah at the end was made by God Himself. It was made by so to say. By throwing in the fire and God made it. That's one thing about the menorah. Another idea of the menorah is yeshna ha'avodah da'atavas ha'menorah. You have to set it up, get it ready to be lit. Ha'achana, to prepare. Ha'psila, you have to get ready. You have to get the wicks ready. V'Hashem, and the oil. And again, the oil, we're not just talking about getting the oil to go to the supermarket and buy olive oil and pour it into the menorah, which is also something that you would have to do, but that you had to actually prepare the menorah oil in a special way. Not all the oils, it was special shemen, kasis lamar, zach. It had to be a special kind of oil prepared in a special way, as we know from the story of Chanukah. And only then you light the menorah. The Rebbe says, in our parsha, we're talking about the menorah, with regard to what point are we talking about? It's God's commandment to Moshe, to tell Aaron, lahadlikas menorah, to light it. Making the menorah was Moshe's job. Either Moshe did it, or God helped him, or showed him. But then there's the getting the gear, the stuff ready, raw materials. So that also is a challenge. So therefore, but that's Moshe's job, or the Kohanim. And this parsha, we're emphasizing the idea of the lighting of the menorah. When you light the candles. Maybe Rashi, as Rashi talks about from the Chazal, from our rabbis, the greatness of the lighting of the menorah. That God testified to Aaron, because Aaron was feeling a bit bad. Why does he not get mentioned in the dedication of the Mishkan on behalf of his tribe? Moshe, the sons of Aaron, just incidentally, unlike any other tribe, the tribe of Levi was divided into three families, as we learned many times, Gershon, Kas, and Mari. They each had their own kind of minor prince. Then the general prince of the whole tribe of Levi was also from the house of Kohanim, right? There was there's Isamar that managed them. There was Elazar that was kind of the prince. So from the house of Aaron, they took care of the family of Levi, and they didn't find that the family of Levi, the tribe of Levi, was involved in the dedication. They were involved in the service, but not the dedication. So God told them, yours is greater than theirs because you're going to light the menorah. V'hinei, Omer Azal, our rabbis have taught us, Haroitze sheyachim. If you go to synagogue and you see people standing in the shul, and you could either face directly to the ark, but if you see people going to the right or to the left, it's not by chance. Because the Gemara teaches us that in Baba Basra, that Roitza Shiachim, if you want to be smart, you want to be wise, is Yadrim, go to towards Durham. So go towards towards south. So in this case, would be the menorah was to if you're facing east. So if you're facing east, then the south would be if you're facing east, so the south would be. Why would the south be? So how Yadrim would be? The menorah would be, I guess, to the side.
Be on the right side when you go in.
Right. Yeah, the right side. So
because the right is from the east,
right.
Yes, yeah.
So right to Shiachim Yadrim. If you want to be smart, face south. V'simoncha menorah b'darm. And why is that going to bring on smarts? Because the menorah was in the south. Menorah is about smartness, about wisdom, about God's wisdom. And what's Chachma Torah? Even the nations that have their own things that are ideas of scholarly and wisdom, and it doesn't come close to the Torah. It's le'enei kol ha'amim. Everyone sees that the Torah is the Chachma of Hashem. So if the menorah is so special and it represents Chachma, so the Rebbe asks a question that maybe other people don't ask. Inyan haTorah shaykh Moshe. Moshe's Torah. Moshe kibul Torah Sinai Masara. Moshe received Torah and gave it over to Joshua. So if the menorah represents Torah, that's Moshe's department. The Gemara calls it Zichru Torah's Moshe Avdi. The Torah testifies in Tanakh that God says, I think it's in Yeshua, right? Malachim, sorry. It says Malachi. It says Zichru Torah's Moshe Avdi. Remember the Torah of Moshe, my servant. So Torah is connected to Moshe. Shenikras al Shemai, that's called on Moshe's name. So why does Aaron write the menorah? If Moshe is Torah and the menorah represents Torah or the light of Torah, and so much so that if a person wants to be smart, to face the menorah. So why does Aaron light the menorah, not Moshe? This is Moshe's department, the lighting of the menorah should be. So the Rebbe answers this question. When we analyze the details of the menorah, the way the Torah teaches us about how one is to prepare and light the menorah. The menorah yesh ner. The menorah has a ner. A ner literally is a candle, but in this case it's not a candle. It's of wax, but it's the cup. Sheklel kli. It has. What's the definition of a ner? A ner has to have a vessel, a receptacle, to hold the oil. Psila. It has to have a wick. If you don't have a wick, there's no point. And it has to have shemen. So the definition according to Torah of a ner, what we call candle, would be a receptacle, a wick, and the oil, the fuel. And then on top, and then you have the light. That's the light that comes on top of the ner. The candle is the mitzvah, and Torah is the light. The Torah connects the mitzvahs, commandments, to the candle. Torah is like the fire that lights the candle. As we have countless Maimarim that talks about the Ner Mitzvah, Torah, whether the Maimarim of Chanukah, the Maimarim of Beha'aloscha, starting from the Alter Rebbe, the whole idea of the Kli and the Or, the Ner and the Or. Ner Mitzvah is connected to the Ner, to the candle, and Torah is the light. But what's known, we have the generalization of Torah in a general sense, and then we have the details. Even though typically we attribute the candle to the mitzvahs, and the light is a reference in general to Torah. Torah is the light, mitzvahs is the candle. But in more detailed, within Torah itself, there's the candle of Torah, and there's the, so to say, the light, the fire of Torah. The Rebbe gives an example. What would be an example of a candle of Torah and the or of Torah, the light of Torah? Limud Torah, when a person studies Torah, we know one of the things you have to speak Torah. You can't think it in your mind. You can't read it like you're reading a novel. God forbid. Kedrashas Chazal, as our rabbis have taught it, al pasuk kichayim heim, it's life l'moitzehem. You have to moitzi, take it out. Al tikr l'moitzehem ela l'moitzihem bepeh, means you have to articulate it with your mouth. One of the halachic conditions of limud HaTorah, so much like the Alter Rebbe talks over and over again, you're not yoytze limud HaTorah if you don't actually say it. That's why when you go to a yeshiva, or you go to a shul and someone's learning, or someone in their house, you hear them murmuring at least. You have to hear, it's like you can't just look at it. You have to actually use, that's the mitzvah, that's the action of limud HaTorah, like the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya. And that's also the nusach, the language of the blessing when we learn, before we study Torah, we say la'asik b'divrei Torah, in the words of Torah. La'asik b'Torah, not just to preoccupy ourselves in Torah, but it's in the divrei, the speech of Torah. Ela la'asik b'divrei Torah. Kivan she'asik b'Torah tzarich li'is b'dibur dafka. One of the conditions of studying Torah is to study it is to actually speak it. However, the Rebbe says, hadibur b'Torah ain't tachlis adayin. That's still not the bottom line. Sharei, that's just one of the conditions of Torah. Sharei hadibur b'Torah yeshna gam etzel tinuk. A child that could read, it also could read Torah. Like we learn in Parshas Kedoshim, that from when a child starts to speak, a father is obligated to start teaching his son Torah. That's the idea of the Orla, right? Shalosh Shanim. B'shana Arvius, Kodesh Hilulim. Hilulim is to speak, the speaking of Torah. That's one of the limudim that we have. Nevertheless, as the child develops and gets older, in the early years, he still doesn't have proper thinking. A person, if you don't start adding to that, you're just going to say the words of Torah, so you're just speaking words and letters, pronouncing words. But there's no understanding, comprehension of what you're saying. So therefore, speech is not the bottom line of Torah. It's already starting to be the vessel, because you have to speak, so it's already like the candle to start understanding Torah. But as a person gets older, and specifically, halachically, according to the law, when it comes to Torah Sheba'al Peh, the oral Torah, if you don't understand what you're saying, you're not Mekayim Mitzvahs Talmud Torah. V'nimtza she'inin haner shu akli le'elor, in the candle part of the fire of Torah. V'Torah gufo inin hadiber she'b'Torah. That would be the speech. The speech would be like the candle. Shu akli, it's the vessel that when you add with that havana v'asaga she'b'Torah, the comprehension of Torah means without the speech, there's no candle to put a fire to, because it's not called limud HaTorah. That creates the opportunity that when you understand it, then you have a candle and a fire. Then the understanding is the light. So based on this, we'll understand what's the commandment that God gives to Moshe to tell Aaron about kindling the menorah with regard to Torah. Just like it comes to a candle. You could have a candle. You could have the three parts that we said of the candle. The cup, the oil, and the wick. All the details. The vessel, the kli, the cup, the oil, the wick. But it's not lit yet. So too when a person studies Torah. It still could be that you're going to learn Torah with comprehension. But there's no or. So even the Rebbe said, even though the Rebbe kind of didn't mention that before, that even now the Rebbe is categorizing even the hasaga, even the comprehension to the kli, to the ner, because that's also just a component. What is a person? What's the real fire of Torah? It's not even the comprehension. Is the light, What does that mean? The Rebbe is going to explain. It's still not lit up. It's not just that someone else doesn't get light from it. So to say you're just doing a private study. It doesn't light up by you, as by the person who's studying in their godly soul. There's no light inside of you. You do a sipur, like the story is told. The Baal Shem Tov once talked about his students. Although they're candles, and these are the students of the Baal Shem Tov. So we're not just talking about children that are reading words. We're talking about people that have great understanding in Torah. But the Baal Shem Tov said, they're not candles that are lighting up. They have to be lit. Al-Derech says also, another story that Rebbe says. My father says the story. My father-in-law says the story. Meaning the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. About a statement that one of the Rebbes, the Yehudi, said to a Jew, to a person who was a masmid. What's the definition? That's the definition of a masmid, a person who toils in Torah day and night. So obviously this person wasn't just reading words. The person had a great, broad understanding of Torah. With knowledge and sharpness, charifus. One of the Rebbes told him, I forget which Rebbe it was, 22 maybe tells us. Doesn't that? The Rebbe doesn't want to tell us who. So that it's not enough for you to learn Torah. The Torah has to teach you. That's what it means to be lit up. That's the commandment when you kindle the menorah. It's not enough just to present the candle. With all the components, and here the Rebbe is including even the Havan of Asaga, the comprehension, even in the level of Bikiyas and Charifus, in knowledge and sharpness. It's not enough. It's not enough to have a candle, you have to light the candle. What's this meaning with Torah? It's not enough to learn the Torah. Even on the highest level of learning, of study, it has to be a Torah that's a light, a lichtige Torah, a Torah that's full of light. And aside for the menorah that has to be lit and give light to the person studying, him or herself, the proper thermometer to see if the Torah, if the menorah is properly lit up, is if you're teaching others, if the light is going to someone else. How is your studying of Torah affecting your family? You have a person, I think there's a letter once of a chassid, the times the Rebbe Shabbat went to the United States. So the chassid was an old chassid, the children, I think, went before him. They brought him to somewhere in the Midwest, and I think they made it to Cleveland or Cincinnati. All the kids went off the derech. They weren't Shomer Shabbos. And the father was an old chassid with a long beard from Russia, but there was no connection. It didn't affect anything in the family. So here we have it. That the point is, it has to start within your own family. Till your space, not just your family, your space of influence in the world, and the whole world itself should be lit up with your studying of Torah. Just like the neirs, the candles of the menorah. The fire of the menorah. The Beis Hamikdash in the Holy Temple. The whole world was lit up from the menorah. Like the Chazal teach us, Misham Oyru Yotzech Halaylam. From the Beis Hamikdash through the menorah, light went out to the whole world. Because we know that Shlomo Melech, in his great wisdom, symbolized this. And how he made the windows. He could have made the windows two ways. He could have made the windows that would just be regular windows like we have today. He could have made the windows of the Beis Hamikdash where it's expanded out on the outside and more narrow on the inside, so it could bring in. Expand there on the inside, so it brings in moats. All the light should come into the temple. Shlomo made it the opposite. That it was smaller on the inside and broad on the outside. Why? Because the light was going out, not coming in. The menorah was giving light out to the world. Okay, so how do you light it up? How do you become a Torah, a menorah that's lit up with, that's not just the keli, not just the candle, but also a menorah that's lit up. A Torah of light, a fire. That you have to daven. The davening is the candle, is the fire that lights your menorah. Or haner, Nasaidei kiloyin Hashem. The light of the candle comes when slowly you have to burn out the oil. When the oil dries, when there's no more oil left, there's no more fire left. The fire will last as long as there's oil. V'apsilin has to be a wick. And the more that it consumes the oil on the wick, will be a greater fire. Well, the Rebbe says, there's a question in Torah. What does it mean to the prohibition on Shabbos to light a fire? Is it fanning the fire or the burning and consumption of the wood? For another time for that discussion, the differences. What does it mean to consume the oil on the wick? The whole point of the fire is to burn out the oil on the wick. And what does that mean in avodah? Burn out your chumrius, your materialism, your coarseness. Grubkeit is coarseness. Your yeshus, your ego, your metzias, your identity. That has to be burnt out. That means all that could be part of the candle when you're learning Torah. You have to burn that out. And that happens through studying through prayer, through davening. And what does a person do when davens? One contemplates begadlus hakel, the greatness of the Shem, ubeshiflas adam, and the lowliness of the person. Notwithstanding the fact the person could be a great scholar with great knowledge, you have to have the recognition of your lowliness, your humility, and be so joyful. An opportunity, the tremendous opportunity that was given to us. That you've given an opportunity to daven. You're not doing anyone a favor. The favor is yours. The favor is that you're able to daven. And through davening is the liskar ve'elav. Notwithstanding who you are, you could become close to him through davening. And just that pivot in the mindset is ready to start lighting the menorah. That's already a whole change. When you realize it's not about you're doing God a favor by davening. God is doing you a favor, allowing you to daven as a method to get close to him. Kisimchas hedyet. It's like a simple person. V'shafel anashim, the lowest of people. As explains in Tanya, imagine the king comes to you, to your house, and you serve him a coffee or a tea with biscuits. You're so excited that you even have opportunity. Because why would the king ever come to you? When a person realizes this, your lowliness and God's greatness, that is the consumption, the burning out of the oil in the wick. That's what the fire has to do, and that's why you need that's what tefillah is. Then your Torah has light. So what does it turn out? It turns out is the Beha'aloscha and Eiros, kindling the Menorah, that's not the Torah. The Torah is old as the candles, the Ner. The fire is the davening, and the davening belongs to Aharon HaKohen. Moshe is the Menorah as it stands. But to put the light to the Menorah, which that's what this week's parsha is talking about, that's Aharon, because that's tefillah, that's davening. Omer Azal, rabbis have taught us. Torah lo b'shamayim, Torah is not in heaven. Also, a person that is an egotistic person is not where you're going to find Torah. You want to properly be a custodian, a person who's holding Torah. You have to nullify your chumrius, your coarseness, your ego, yourself. That's why in our davening we repeat 3 times a day when we say the Shemona Esrei. My soul should be like dust to everything. Nothing. I'm not greater than anything, any creation. Offer, just like dirt. Shakol dashim alav, everyone steps on it. Shizui tachsa shifla is the lowest level. Only then I could open my heart to Torah. The condition to properly be a person of Torah is anivus, is to be an anav. It's humbleness. Why do we say open my heart to Torah, not open my mind to Torah? Open my heart, my mind to your Torah. Torah is a study. So why do we ask God to open our heart to Torah? Sharei believe in that Torah, because when it comes to studying Torah, seemingly The most important thing is the comprehension. So we should ask God to open our minds to Torah. So the answer is We're not talking about a person or a situation where you're lacking in your limitations, opening your mind to Torah. That could be fine. That could be all there. But you haven't humbled yourself yet. That your soul is like earth to everyone. Like when you wake up in the morning starting, the first thing you say, I acknowledge Hashem. It's dependent on you. The only reason I'm here sitting up in bed is because you've returned my soul to me. How you do? And then you start davening. The beginning of davening, the acknowledgement. Until you reach through the Psuke de Zimra, the Birchas Krishma, the Krishma, then you stand silently like a servant, like a servant in front of his or her master, standing before God in the Amida and the Shemon Esrei. That's an effort not to open your mind, but to open your heart to Torah. You should feel Torah inside you. You shouldn't be numb to Torah. As the Alter Rebbe had said, the Gemara tells us about Rebbe. The Rebbe said about his students that Zurta de Bechu, my smallest students, could resurrect the dead. When a person's cold intellectually, that's like you're dead to Torah mitzvahs, to godliness. You need to resurrect the dead inside you. When your heart starts to feel Torah. As we spoke in the Farbrengen before. And that's why when it comes to kindling the flame of the menorah, the heart of the menorah, the passion of Torah, not the technicalities, not the words of Torah, not even the avodah, not even the comprehension of Torah, but the eish, the fire of Torah, that's Aaron. Even though, like we say, that the menorah itself represents Torah, that's why a person wants to be smart, you daven south, and that's Moshe, but lighting the menorah is Aaron. The point is not just to have Torah, but to have Torah that's a light, that has fire. You have to daven, like we said. If there's no proper davening, which is psach libi b'sar sacha, and then there's no or. And who's the, so to say, the custodian of prayer? That's Aaron HaKohen. He accompanies the bride, meaning to say the Jewish people, because avodah satfila is the avodah mimata l'mayla, right? It's the avodah to God. Moshe kibul Torah misinai. Moshe received Torah. He accompanies God. He brings the Torah down. Aaron brings the soul up, the person up. Shapoyu lahalis is Knesset Yisrael. That through Aaron HaKohen, he elevates Knesset Yisrael, the multiple of the Jewish people, milmata l'mayla, from below above. And he's different. That they have different jobs. The Alter Rebbe speaks many times in the Hu Moshe of Aaron, whom Aaron Moshe. Sheshvina de Malka, that the representative of the king, Shepoil Inin Amshachim to bring godliness from above down. That's Moshe's job. But Aaron's job is to take us and lift us up. And how do we do that? Through prayer. And that's why he's the one who's commanded to light the menorah. So too in our avodah, every Jewish person. We also hear the Chiddush, because we always say that every Jew has a spark of Moshe. Here the Rebbe says that every Jew has a spark of Aaron. Shahari Aaron who Mishiva Royim. Why? Because Aaron is one of the 7 shepherds, and the shepherd is for every single Jew. That's the definition of a shepherd. That's the difference between the 7 shepherds versus the 8 princes. Shizau Inyan Hamispal. That's the idea of a person that could daven, a davener. That's from Aaron HaKohen. They're davener, the Rebbe says. The story I once heard, you have to say a story b'shem Omri. That's what we say, right? So Rabbi Zalman Schachter says a story that, I don't know if he saw it or he heard it, that the Frierdiker Rebbe, after his stroke, his daughter, one of the Rebbe Frierdiker Rebbe's daughters, the Rebbe Simchana, was helping him put on tefillin. And then she brought the mirror so the Rebbe could see if the tefillin was exactly between the eyes. So they're looking both in the mirror, and he says to his daughter Chana, Rebbe Chana, what do you see? Like looking at the Frierdiker Rebbe, what do you see? She says, no. The Frierdiker Rebbe said, I see a davener. So the Frierdiker Rebbe defined himself as a davener, a person who davens. She says, the davener. And the davener within the person, the praying person within the person, is how you light your menorah. Then your Torah has a Torah of a flame. Nevertheless, even though that Aaron is the one who has to light the menorah. The Rebbe says, God spoke to Moshe, Dabra Aaron, you tell Aaron. V'amarte love, and speak to him when you kindle the menorah. This is a very important thing. This is a very important component, that even our yearning of passion, even our davening, has to be told to us through Moshe. The commandment to Aaron that he should kindle the menorah, who tells Aaron that that's what he has to do is Moshe. Like it's brought down the Medrash. That there were 13 talks that God said, commandments, to Moshe and Aaron together. And corresponding to those 13, there's 13 times that Aaron was included in God's commandment, and 13 times that it was only to Moshe. He has to tell Aaron. Even the ability to light a menorah through davening is because Torah says so. Which is very important today when we try to understand a spiritual journey. You have to know that even our spiritual journey has to be guided by Torah. Even if the spiritual journey is going to light the Torah within us. And that's when God tells Moshe, you tell Aaron that you have to kindle the menorah. Another reason the Rebbe says why. Aaron was told specifically to kindle the menorah. The Rebbe says, when it says to kindle the menorah, it's nei rois, not behadlik as haner, which would be singular. It says nei rois, the plural. Why? Of course, because there's 7 candles to the menorah. The kayal shisha haner is because it's talking about the 6 candles. Shekoilim as shisha ribu b'nei Yisrael. Each one of this, 6 extensions of the base candle, and that corresponds to the 10,000, which is the way you say in Hebrew, 600,000 Jews. All the Jewish souls of all times are broken up in the smallest pieces into 600,000. And that was the commandment to Aaron, to light the multiple of all the Jewish people. Although there's all types of people. And they're different, means even though there's 7 or 6 subgroups, then there's subgroups of subgroups, but it's all broken down, even though today, Baruch Hashem, there's more than 600,000 Jews. But nevertheless, there's 600,000 styles of Jews. And not just talking about different ways of avodah. There's also some people that the only thing you could say about them is that they're a bria, they're a creation. Means you're trying to find the compliment. Well, how can I compliment this person and what they're doing with their life, how they're spending their time in this world for 120 years? You could say, well, they live. That's all we could say about them, that they exist. Aaron's job is even a bria ba'alma. Even that's why he says that even a person who's just the only thing you could say about them is they're a creation. That's all they have going for them. It's Aaron's job to light them up and face them towards the center candle. That's why it says in Pirkei Avos, Aaron, a bris. He even loves the person that all we could say that person is a bris. A person is a creation, a brios. That every person, no matter what type of Jew they are, should unite together to do Hashem's will. Mishnah, okay? The Rebbe quotes Aaron. Oyev Shalom, he loves peace. Raidev Shalom, he pursues peace. Oyev es abrios, he loves every creation. Even if that's the only name you could give them. Umakarvam the Torah, and it brings them close to Torah. This is also connected to prayer, which, like we said before, is the idea of Aaron. As the Alter Rebbe brings in the Siddur that the Alter Rebbe organized, from the writings of the Ariya College. Everyone who starts davening before the Matovu, the Alter Rebbe put in from the writings of the Arizal that it's appropriate to say before we daven, I accept upon myself the commandment of loving my Jewish friend as myself. The Rebbe says understood. Only when a person has proper Avos Yisrael, which is a representation of Aaron, then the davening that's used to light your menorah, that your Torah should be lit. It's not just about you. How do I light my menorah? I have to daven. Before we even start davening, we say, and you have to mean it. And it has to show itself. Then there's a light. Not just by us, and not just by us as individuals, by us collectively, but also not just amongst the Jewish people, but for the whole world. The nations are going to go towards the light. And the promise is going to be when Mashiach comes. Then all the nations are going to have a clear language. Everyone together to work towards a single goal of the light of Hashem. I want to say, see, this piece is small, or if we have, okay, this is a long talk. I want to go down and a little further in the Fabrengen. I think we learned this Fabrengen before. I want to learn about okay, let's start from here. The Rebbe continues about what we spoke in the previous Fabrengen, I'm not sure, Shvuos of that year, 1964, The Rebbe was talking in Tafshin Chavdal 20 years before the previous Rebbe was already in America, in 1944. That on the 20th of Cheshvan, which is the birthday of the Rebbe Rashab, from the year 1872. In 1872, the Rebbe Rashab turned 12. The Shabbos Ahi, on the year, so he turned 12, his birthday was the 20th of Cheshvan, in the year 1872. If I'm mistaken in my calculation, please correct me. The Shabbos Ahi, he giu l'lababich habri orchim. So that the Rebbe Rashab this is a few years, about 10 years after the passing of the Tzemach Tzedek, 9 years after the passing of his grandfather, Tzemach Tzedek. His father, the Rebbe Marash, was already the Rebbe, fourth Rebbe. A lot of guests came to Chabad, to Lubavitch. That was the city of the Lubavitcher Rebbes. That's what we called Lubavitch. Rabbanim, scholars, rabbis, soichrim, business people, gvirim, rich people, v'chasidim, balibatim, business people. Ubeneim achsidim haidu harav Reb Shneir Zalman, Zaplotsky, Mekremetchuk. Okay, we'll call him Reb Zalman. That's as far as I could go. The Chassid Reb Zalman from Kremetchuk came to the Rebbe Maharaj. Harav Reb Shneir Zalman, Neymark, Miplotsk, Pelech Vitebsk, from the area of Vitebsk, was another Chassid, Zalman Neymark, if I'm pronouncing it right, from Vitebsk, from Plotsk, and Rablev Minevel, which is also from Vitebsk area. There was like states in Russia. Notwithstanding these great amount of guests, on the 21st of Cheshvan, the day after the Rebbe Shab's birthday, the Rebbe Marash told his attendant, his name was Reb Leivik, tonight I'm not going to have any guests come into a private audience, even though there's so many guests came for Shabbos, and they were probably expecting to have a private audience on Sunday night. Aside for these three Chasidim, Reb Zalman from Kremenchuk, Reb Zalman Neymark from Plotsk, and Reb Lev of Nevel, they should enter the Reb Marash's private chambers. When they come into the Rebbe Marash, Omer Lahem, he told them as follows. Hayom hu yom simcha etzli. Today is a very special day. Rishab, that was the term he used for the Rebbe Rishab, Reb Shomber. The Kan Moisiv Koikdish Merchami Adam b'Maimer Musker. Kach Hoya Adam Marash Koires as Adam Nishmasedim b'Rashitevis Rishab. That the Rebbe Marash would call his son later to be the Rebbe Rishab. Why? Because the Tzemach Tzedek gave him that name when he was by his circumcision. Why is it such a great joy for the Rebbe Marash today? Because today his son Rishab, at 12 years old, finished the 6 parts of the Mishnayos, which is the whole Mishnayos is divided into 6 books. The custom in the house of the Rav, meaning the house of the Rebbe, was that by the time a child turned 13, they should know the whole Mishnayos by heart. The Rebbe Rishab finished it a year earlier. And when the Rebbe Rishab turned 12, he finished the Mishnayos. That's why it's a huge simcha. It's such a simcha. He wasn't even going to have any guests, any other people, private audience. It was sort of say almost a private moment for the Rebbe Marash. And after he included these 3 Chassidim, the 2 Reb Zalmans and Reb Yehuda Leib, in his joy that his son, the Rishab, already finished the whole Mishnayos by heart, he said, Maimer Chassidus, he said a special discourse. Asima Mishnayos to make a hadron on the Mishnayos on behalf of celebrating his son's completion of learning the Mishnayos by heart. It's not easy to learn the whole Mishnayos by heart, trust me. Beinin Maimer Reb Shua Levi, I feel stumped here. Okay, I'm forgetting who the last I should know because I finished Mishnayos not too long ago. Reb Shua ben Levi and the next Tana that he said a mimer on their statement. After the Rebbe said the Rebbe Marash said a mimer. Kama Sipurim, he said different stories. A story of each one of the different Rebbes. Begami Atzmi even said a story about himself. That was very wondrous. He never told stories about himself. And the stories evidently were about Mishnayos. So we definitely learned his story once. One of the stories that he told was about the Alter Rebbe. There are Moshe Moshe, the Alter Rebbe had 3 sons. The Alter Rebbe had the Mittel Rebbe, Dov Ber, Chaim Avram, and Moshe. Moshe was older, I think, than Chaim Avram. No, Moshe was the youngest. Moshe the Moshe, Noilad B'Chodesh Tammuz, he was born in the month of Tammuz, in the year Tov Kuf Lametes 1779. He was older than his nephew, the Rebbe the Tzemach Tzedek, who was the son of the sister of Reb Moshe, Dvar Leah, by 11 years. On the day of the circumcision of this Reb Moshe, who there's a whole story about Reb Moshe and his life, not for now. Is in Rabbeinu Azakin, b'yoyse daikim his mind. Alter Rebbe, we know, was very time conscious. Everyone had a time to be there. The Alter Rebbe was very strict with time. You know, the Alter Rebbe was usually finished davening by 7 in the morning every day. So everyone was waiting. This day, the day of the bris, they finished davening at 7 o'clock. And everyone was waiting that the Alter Rebbe should come in so they should do the bris, because everything was on time by the Alter Rebbe. There's no such thing as delaying things. And the Alter Rebbe didn't, he was punctual. So here everyone's waiting. The Alter Rebbe is not coming in for the bris. Many hours passed. It's already midday. It's already after midday and they still didn't do the bris. After a little time, Nichnas the Beis HaMedrash came into the Beis HaMedrash Yehudi, a Jew, Shayu Levush Begadim Levanim, Me'il Parva Platz, a white clothing. Dover Pele B'Chodesh Tammuz, it seems like he was wearing a white fur. So to walk in on a white fur in the month of Tammuz in July is kind of strange. Sakak Safav, he had a sack over his shoulders. Umakal B'Yadin, a stick in his hand. And when he came in, this Jew came in, in what I think is a white fur in the middle of July, Miyad Yatzer Rabbeinu Hazaken Mechedra, the Alter Rebbe came out. Nigesh Elav v'Amrulai, he went straight over to this Jew, said, Shalom Aleichem Rebbe Tzalel, welcome Rebbe Tzalel. V'tziv l'haschal erichas bris, and said the bris should start right now. As Rebbe Tzalel hanal kibud Rabbeinu Hazaken, that what honor did the Alter Rebbe give this Rebbe Tzalel? V'agoshes atinik l'kisa shel Aliyah, to bring the child to the chair of Elijah the prophet. And when the Moyel says that the blood to give life, that the custom is by bris. We dip a finger in to give the child who just had a bris to suck a little bit of the wine. That's the custom. The Alter Rebbe told this Rebbe Tzal that he should be the one to give his son, later he named Moshe, to taste from the wine of the finger of Rebbe Tzal. Afterwards, it was very wondrous to the Chassidim. So they're trying to figure out who's this Rebbe Tzal. The Alter Rebbe waited for him and he honored him. When they asked him, who are you? I'm Betzalke, the shepherd. He wanted to try to kind of get to know more about him. He disappeared. So the Chassidim went to the Alter Rebbe and he told him this. So the Alter Rebbe answered him, it's true. He's 40 years a shepherd. Wherever that is, in a village in an area near Shvinatzian. He's an expert in the Talmud Bavli, in the Bavli Talmud, in the Jerusalem Talmud, in the Sefra, Sefri, Tosefta, all the various extensions of the Talmud and the Medrash, Rambam, etc. But what's special about it? Notwithstanding, this is the idea of the or, the light that we speak about in the beginning of the Sicha, is not how much he knows and what he knows. Is what's lit up within him because of the power of his studying the Mishnayos by heart. Ki Mishnah Oisis Neshama. We know the words Mishnah make, if you turn the letters around, as the letters of the Neshama. That's why we learn Mishnayos for the deceased. And after the Rebbe Marash told the story, he told them other stories. He said, he says, you're dismissed. So we'll stop here. Obviously, the idea of the bris and the idea of the power of the Mishnayos is I'm learning the story in honor of my new grandson, who's named Nassan Ben Musya, who had his bris this week. May he elevate that idea of learning Mishnayos and Torah or etc. I want to wish everyone a good Chabad. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good